Silence. Some of us may find silence empty, unfulfilling, and maybe even a little uncomfortable. Yet to an introvert like myself, silence is home. Psychiatrist Carl Jung was the first person to propose the idea of personality types. He believed that we all relate to the world differently. These differences in our interpretations are influenced not only by our personal experiences, but also by our introverted or extroverted personality types. We've all come to know the quiet kids in our classes. Yet despite their silence, these introverts stand out like sore thumbs. My question is, have we really took the time to get to know these individuals? Being a relatable introvert myself, I feel I can give you all a wholehearted perspective about this misinformed personality type. To get a general understanding of introverts and extroverts, we're going to begin by characterizing the two different personality types. We will then take a look at how biological factors play a role in our development of our temperament, and we'll finish up on a positive note by comparing the strengths of both introverts and extroverts. But let us start by first characterizing introverts and extroverts. Referring back to our friend Carl, Dr. Jung was able to develop an accurate definition of both personalities. According to Jung, an introvert is someone who chooses to focus their own personal experiences, feelings, and thoughts. However, it's important to note that introverts are not shy. Shyness refers to a neurotic condition defined as a fear of social judgment. So if they're not shy, why are us introverts so quiet? It's because we draw our energy and motivation from looking inward. For an introvert, making social connections with a small group of people, or even reading a good book, can be just as rewarding as an extrovert chatting it up at a cake party. Extroverts, however, seem to be polar opposites. If you're an extrovert, you probably tend to focus on your external environment and the faces that fill it. Compared to introverts, extroverts are characterized as socially outgoing. This is also somewhat of a misconception. While it is true that extroverts tend to be social butterflies, so their social nature isn't driven by their longing to make social connections. It is through socializing by which extroverts are able to harness their energy. Psychologist and author Marty Laney explains the introvert and extrovert dynamic nicely. Everything a more introverted person does in the world drains energy from them, while everything a more extroverted person does in the world gains them energy. Now that we have a general sense of what introvert and extrovert personalities are, let's explore the evidence suggesting that we never had a chance between either two. As studies become more sophisticated, information continues to point to the fact that our personalities are a result of our genetic predispositions. Subtle differences in our temperament are observable early in our lives. These differences are exactly reflections of our personalities as we are adults. An experiment ran by Harvard developmental psychologist Jerome Kagan found that infants who react intensely to new experiences are more likely to develop into introverted adults. In Kagan's experiment, 4-month-old infants were exposed to startling stimuli, such as popping balloons and the smell of alcohol. Kagan hypothesized that the highly reactive infants, the infants with the most noticeable responses, would develop into introverted adolescents. Kagan's hypothesis proved correct when he brought the infants back to the lab and found that they had in fact developed into inhibited teenagers. Later research led by Carl Schwartz, an associate of Kagan, found that these highly reactive infants who respond intensely to stimuli, had a much more reactive amygdala later as adults. The amygdala, of course, being the brain's processing center for fear, stimuli, and emotion. To put it simply, introverts have a lower threshold for stimulation, which is why we learn from an early age to keep a low profile to conserve our energy. In the words of Carl Schwartz himself, it's not the genes or the environment that drives this. It's the genes in dialogue with the environment. Our brain chemistry also has fun with our personalities. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine helps us with concentration and deep focus. Acetylcholine, of course, has a stronger role in introverts than in extroverts. On the other hand, dopamine, associated with reward-seeking behavior, plays a much more prominent role in their extrovert counterparts. But how do these uncontrollable factors, like too much dopamine and screaming babies, play in our strengths? Our biological natures, in fact, directly influence what we do best. While an introvert is not talking, they are busy thinking. Their ability to focus and fixate allows them to form fresh perspectives on things. Less talking, of course, means more listening. Introverts are great at picking up verbal and nonverbal cues. And I'm sure we can all agree that the most effective leaders are the ones who take most reflection from their followers. Introverts do just that. An extrovert's outgoing nature makes them the point of focus. Extroverts are known to be teeming with self-esteem. This also makes them great candidates for leadership positions. An extrovert's enthusiasm and reward-seeking behavior forces them outward, making new friends and new discoveries along the way. Now that we have a general sense of what extroverts and introverted personalities are, let's explore the evidence suggesting that we never had a choice between the two. As studies become more sophisticated, information continues to point to the fact that our personalities are a result of our genetic predispositions. Subtle differences in our temperament. Did I already go there? I think I might have already did that. I might have copied and pasted. Excuse me. In conclusion, introverts and extroverts just function differently. While our personality types are different, our relationships with one another don't have to be. We have defined introverts and extroverts, and their biological predispositions, and even compared how these dispositions feed into our individual strengths. Quiet or loud, compelling or obnoxious, we all have our own parts to play in the world. My advice, simply play.